Today I'm going to continue with the Four Noble Truths. This is my second talk on the Four Noble Truths. Just a little reminder, what are the Four Noble Truths? They are suffering, causes of suffering, cessation of suffering, and then the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. Now, in the discourses of the Buddha, we may understand that there are two levels that we can understand the Four Noble Truths. I hope your ears does not suffer that much. So, Four Noble Truths, we can understand it in two levels. The first one is called the teaching about at the mundane or worldly level. And we said this is the explanation of the conventional truths. And then the other one is the teaching of the supramundane level at that level. We call it the explanation of the ultimate truth. Now, Four Noble Truths can actually be understood and experienced at either level. So whether you are at the mundane level or supramundane level, we can do it through the Four Noble Truths. So let's start with the mundane level. We can understand the first truth, suffering. And understand the first truth in three perspectives. So in Buddhism, you can learn it through a lot of numbers. 4 truths, 12 lanes, 3 perspectives. So what are the 3 perspectives? We can learn about it like because of the environmental condition, due to the social condition, due to the personal condition. There are 3 perspectives: environmental, social, and personal. Now, suffering, number 1, we said about, there are 8 types of suffering, right? Suffering, number 1, is related to the environmental condition, what we call the misery of not getting what we want. So in our worldly life, there are many things that we want, such as fame, I want to be famous, such as power, such as good relationships, such as money, wealth, right? Tell me that, raise your hand if you don't want to get rich, or you have enough money. That's all we want, right? That's what we want. But even if we got what we want, suffering still follows. Why? Because say if I have a Mercedes and I have $1 million in my bank, I'm so afraid that I'll lose it one time, which is we just experience, we as my son, that he just experienced this type of suffering. His house got broken in. His laptop got taken, got stolen. His lovely, lovely watch. His car keys. So he just experienced what he had, he lost it. A lot of suffering. Not to mention that his identity. All those data, information in his laptop. So what we have, what we can achieve, we might be afraid that one day it's going to be gone. How about things that we don't want? Okay? Getting things that we don't want is another type of suffering, like natural disaster, like fire or severe weather. So those are related to the environmental condition. Now, second one is referred to actually second, suffering number 2 and 3 are related to the social condition. Okay, 2 of them. One is misery of associating with those we dislike or disagreeable. Think about someone that you don't like and you have to deal with them day in, day out. Number 3 is misery of departing from those we love. Okay. One day, if someone dear to me, say, goes away or passes away, suffering. Suffering number 4, 5, 6, and 7, we said that we have 8, right? 4, 5, 6, and 7 are related to the personal condition, such as being born, old age, sickness, and death. There are always a misconception that being born is very happy. So you go to a birthday party, what do you say? Happy birthday, right? Okay. And only old age, sickness, and death are sad. But you don't understand that old age, sickness, and death are actually the result of what? Birth. So what kind of happiness is that related to being born? Birth is the root, actually. It's the root for getting old, getting sick, and die. Birth is the root. Old age, sickness, and death are only the branches, leaves, flowers, and fruit. The entire process is nothing but suffering. Just like the bitter root is going to produce the bitter fruit. Now, so far I have been talking about what? Suffering, 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 right? Sounds like it's very pessimistic. Sounds like, hey, you're a Buddhist, all you talk about is suffering. But bear in mind that, yes, because I'm talking about the first truth that we have to face. We have to face the fact that life by itself is suffering. But the Buddha said, don't worry, don't worry. This is only the first truth. We have the second, third, and fourth, right? The second one is that we have to find out what is the cause, what are the causes. And then the third one is like, don't worry. Suffering can cease. But we have to find out the cause, right? If we got sick, we have to know what caused the sickness so that we can apply the medication. So let's get to suffering number 8. This is the key factor of all the misery that we just mentioned. This is what is the root, the key factor. It's because we have this 5 aggregates. We have this body, and we have the 4 processes of the mind. 5 aggregates is a little bit to explain and understand, especially for beginners, because I see a few new faces, but you could be a seasoned practitioner or very familiar with the Buddhist terms. If you're not, that's perfectly okay, because I'm not that familiar myself either. So let's learn together and try to explore what is the 5 aggregates. The aggregates in the Sanskrit, it's the Sanskrit word for it is skandha, means collection or composition. In the Chinese language, it's yun. So it has an underlying meaning of consisting. According to Venerable Master Insun, he said that each of these 5 aggregates consist various elements and aspects. So as the sutra said, the The 5 aggregates are like 5 robbers with weapons. They capture sentient beings or sentient beings in the realm of suffering with no escape. So as long as we have these 5 aggregates, we are captive or we are hostages of suffering. Okay? As I just mentioned, the human being is composed of only the mind and the physical form. So let's maybe do a little bit of understanding of what these 5 aggregates are. First, the physical form. The form. Okay? Now this physical form, they have 2 types. One, we do understand. It's this part, the body part. You know, our eye, ear, nose, you know, the organs, our lungs, heart, whatever internal and external physical form, or the material form. So there are 2 of them. One is called the expressive form. Things that we can see, we can touch, or internal organ, even though we cannot touch, but at least, you know, with the X-ray, we know that it's there, right? Or else we won't be able to live. So that is the expressive form. Now the characteristic of the expressive form is it is an obstructive nature. It has an obstructive nature. It is destructible. It occupies certain space. Okay? Certain space. So like this one, like my hand, here is the space. My body, my hand is occupying certain space. Right? Okay? But there is another type, it's called unexpressive form. I know that, you know, expressive form, most of us do understand. But what is the unexpressive form? It's actually the, I hope I pronounce this word correctly, it's called latent energy. It exists as potentials. It generates from the activities of the expressive form. One example, if I punch you, okay, this is my physical form, and I punch you, say I punch Candy over there, okay, I generate certain energy, right? And that certain energy, we would think that energy is not physical form, but that kind of energy is actually composed with small, tiny particles. Okay? So they are considered physical form, but we cannot see it. Right? The energy we cannot see. So here are some descriptions from the Digital Dictionary of DDB, Buddhism. It says, the unexpressed physical form is non-indicative form, non-informative form. It is the form that cannot be perceived by others, but which nonetheless exists within itself, with its existence being surmised through inference, whatever that means. I hope you understand more than I do. I can only think about one example. It's just like the electric current. Okay? We think that the electric current is some kind of, you know, intangible thing. But that current is actually making up with tiny little particles. That it will arise only, you either switch on the knobs or connect it so that it will flow. So it depends on the expressive form to appear. Okay. I'm not a scientist, so to me, it does make sense in a way that, you know, to my understanding, but I hope that we have some engineers here, some scientists here, that they might understand it more. Now, that's, you know, two types of physical forms, okay? Let's get to the four processes of the mind. This is even more complicated. I will just briefly go over and we'll, you know, maybe look at some examples later on. Now this is just certain descriptions, some descriptions of the four processes of the mind. Aggregate number 2, sensation or feeling. The definition of feeling is acceptance. The condition for feeling to arise is contact. I have to contact something that will give me either a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. When I look at this, if it gives me a positive or pleasant feeling, then my mind will say that, oh, I like it. Okay? So the next step will be, I like it, I better take it home. Okay? So that sensation is going to give you a stimulant that will stimulate the sixth consciousness of the mind. That, okay, I will assign a name. This is a beautiful statue. And then I like it. Okay? So, sensation is directed. Maybe I shouldn't touch it. So, sensation is actually directing the next three more processes of the mind. Okay? Now, the next one, the next aggregate is perception or conception. The definition of perception is apprehending perceptual forms. It is a conceptualization of the forms or things that we contact. Okay? I just gave an example that, okay, this is a statue. That is already conceptualization. When my eye sees this thing, my eye only cognizes. I see something. I did not assign a name. I did not conceptualize it. Okay? So the perception part of the mind is to conceptualize what the object that we contact, that give rise to the sensation. Now, number 4, aggregate number 4 is the mental formation or relation. Now, it has 3 processes in this mental factor. They have 3 processes. Number 1 is like, when I see this, I cognize this, and I say that beautiful statue, and then I'll evaluate it. Is it beautiful enough for me to take it home? Give it an evaluation, and then I'll make a decision. Yes, I'll take it home. And then, after making the decision, I'll say that nobody's watching. So, motivates and determine my physical or verbal action. That is the function of mental formation, of mental relation. Consciousness is the most important. Well, all of them are important, of course. But consciousness, the definition of consciousness is discernment. This is what we call the main mind, which directs the other mental processes. It's just like the conscious is the director. Okay, it is the director. That other mental factors are following this director to act or to function. Now, in the Abhidhamma Kosa commentary, it divides the 5 aggregates into 5 categories and 75 subcategories. I'll just number it. Okay? There are 11 physical or material factors. There is only one mind, the chitta. There's 46 mental factors. There are 14 unconnected factors. There are 3 unconditioned, they call it the 3 unconditioned factors. don't worry, I'm not going to go into details of all these factors, okay? But this will just give us some idea of about the 5 aggregates in order to help us understand the reality of this so-called I, which is the key, the main source of our mystery. Now, because of that, we have these 5 aggregates that we perhaps and attach to material, immaterial, exterior, interior phenomena. We generate countless what we call sankhara, or karmic energies that leads to our suffering. So that's the first noble truth of suffering. Start with suffering, ends with suffering. So how about, let's find out the cause, the causes. Causes of suffering can be understood through, again, 3 aspects. The generation of karmic energy, actions performed due to ignorance and defilements, conditions favorable for the maturing of arising and consequences. Beautiful noise in the ear. Shall I adjust it?
Is it turning down the volume? Would that help? Because we can hear you fine.
Shall I turn it off? How about now it's okay. Okay, we just have to bear the impermanence of life. All right. Now, I just mentioned that because of the 5 aggregates, we perform actions that generate karma energy. So, I think I already go over this, but let me repeat it a little bit so that it would be rooted in your 8th consciousness, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. Our sensory organ, the eye. Take an example. The eye comes into contact with an external object. No. The eye can only cognize 2 things: the form or shape and the color. The eye cannot cognize sound. Right? Am I correct? The nose cannot cognize form or color. It can only cognize the fragrance, right? The smell. So each sensory door or sensory organ have their own function. So when it comes in contact with the external object, it's only doing the cognition. But immediately after cognition, our 6th sense or 6th consciousness taking over, and it takes off the other 4 processes of mental factor: feeling, perception, volition, and what is it? Consciousness. Okay? So we know that all these mental processes are directed by the main mind. Okay? So that is why taming or training the mind is so important in the Buddha's teaching. Now, there are more to this mind other than taking over or directing all these functions or actions of the remaining mental factors. There are 2 more functions of this main mind. One is discernment. The other one is storage. In the Yogacara school, they divided this 6th consciousness into 2 more. So it's the 6th consciousness, the 7th consciousness, and the 8th consciousness. The 6th consciousness is doing the direction, okay? I like it, I don't like it. Good, bad. So take it or not take it. Now the seventh consciousness, it's very, very difficult to deal with because it constantly differentiating, discriminating that this is the I, which is different from you. This is mine, which is different from yours. So the seventh consciousness, the mana, functions like there is a separate entity who is doing the action. Okay? And then the eighth consciousness is called the alaya. The alaya functions like, oh, whatever I experience, I'm going to store in there. It's just like the memory of a computer that I'm going to store in there. So, two more functions of the eighth consciousness. So, what happened? How can all these functions of the mind that generates suffering, how does it function so that we suffer? When we contact with a certain thing, when the like or this pleasant or unpleasant sensation arises, and then we give it an evaluation and then say that we like or dislike, and then we take action, like I just did. You know, I'm going to see that nobody is looking, so I'm going to hide it and take it home. Why do I do that? It's because my action was connected with a defilement called craving, greed. It's a negative mental factor. Okay? So what if somebody says something that I don't like? And my action would be taken based on aversion. But if I act blindly without knowing the cause and consequences, that means I'm acting or reacting with ignorance. So there are three poisons: craving, aversion, and ignorance. If we put our action or perform our action based or connected to these three defilements or three poisons, then what happened? What happened? With the defilement, actions are performed and then we just generated negative karmic energy, right? We talk about karmic energy. We just generated that. So we planted the seed of lemon into the ground. What will be the fruit? Lemon, right? We cannot have sweet mango. Am I correct? So wholesome action produces wholesome fruit. Unwholesome action produces unwholesome fruit. So that is why if we perform actions in accordance with or connected to the poisons, then we're bound to suffer. Okay? That is the law of nature. I'm glad that I covered quite a bit of my notes. This brings us to another concept of Buddhism, which is very complicated. It's called the karma. Normally, I would like to avoid this topic because it involves too many different concepts, and at times controversy will arise. But just briefly to touch the subject, karma can be divided into three types: positive or wholesome karma, negative or unwholesome karma, neutral or non-moving karma. I think wholesome karma and unwholesome karma, it's a little bit more easier to understand because we know that, if there is a cause, there is a consequence, right? If we create negative karmic energy, we're bound to suffer. And if we create wholesome energy, then we're okay. But a question will arise then. So all I need to do is to perform wholesome energy and be a good person, be a virtuous person. Then my fruit will be happy. It's a sweet mango, right? So why do I need to practice meditation and develop wisdom as the Buddha taught? Why? All I need is to perform wholesome energy. Right? Where does concentration and wisdom falls in? Well, to perform wholesome energy, we have first to be very, extremely mindful that what we are doing, and make sure it's 120% wholesome. If we are not mindful, then chances are that the action we thought they are wholesome might end up to be not that wholesome or virtuous. One example is if you go on walking on the street, down the street, you see somebody holding a sign that hunger, you have a spare dollar, right? It's very common that we see that, okay? And you said, I'm going to perform my wholesome energy. Okay, I have $10 in my pocket. Here you go. Very good. Good intention. Wholesome actions. Without knowing that if this money that we gave out, is he going to buy a gun and shoot somebody? Good intention becomes an awful result. Right? So we need wisdom. We need wisdom. Now, to develop wisdom, we have to have a steady mind. Because our mind is so monkey that it jumps around. It jumps around, we're not clear. We don't know the cause, we don't know the effect. So we have to train the mind to keep it steady. And meditation, or developing concentration, is very important in the process, so that we do not act blindly. We will have wisdom to deal with our day-to-day chores or routines. I have a lot to go, but my time is up. So I'll jump to the conclusion. And I already said that in order to develop wholesome karmic energy, we have to be very mindful with all the actions we perform. We need to practice mindfulness and develop concentration. To avoid action, to avoid acting blindly and ignorantly, cultivate wisdom is a must. Therefore, moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom are essential for the cessation of suffering. I understand that I have provided too much information in this talk. And my purpose, of course, after you listen to my talk, you're not going to get enlightened immediately. I do not guarantee that at all. So, we still need to practice. But my purpose is to plant a little seed. And hopefully, this is a seed of sweet mango that in time, eventually, this little seed is going to sprout. I'm very grateful and thankful that you are being very patient with this extra noise that we have. So, let's do our merit dedication. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all